MashaAllah, today is a special edition, alhamdulillah. We got Brother Samir Kashif with us here. In case if I haven't introduced myself to you, my name is Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. I'm the founder of KalamPower.com, helping Muslims speak with confidence. And my role here at Sayyidah Khadija Center is the instructor of the Youth Leadership Program, alhamdulillah, the Youth Leadership Program here at SKC. Brother Samir, you want to say a few words about yourself, and then we'll get started with the halaqah. Yeah?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I myself, like many of you, am just a regular attendee here. I've been coming to this mosque for easily over a decade, and I've been a student of Dr. Hamid Salimi's for around that much time, and alhamdulillah, there's great programs that we could get into later. But yeah, that's my introduction. I work in consulting, technology consulting to be more specific, and I continue to pursue my studies on the side.
MashaAllah, very cool, amazing. I mean, yeah, alhamdulillah, a decade, an OG. I'm telling you, man, I've been here for a number of years as well, subhanAllah. But today's conversation is something near and dear to our hearts. I'm sure for everyone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, this topic is near and dear to our hearts, all in all. And that is the whole topic of one body, one ummah. One body, one ummah. By a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with that hadith where Rasulullah is saying that the ummah is like one body? You heard of it? Only one? A few others? Yeah, some sisters? Yeah, there you go, mashallah. So just to make sure we're all on the same page here, from Sahih al-Bukhari 6011, Sahih Muslim 2586, the English translation goes like this. Rasulullah is saying that the parable of the believers in their affection, mercy, and compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fever. And so this is going to be our guiding principle for today. For this halaqah, for those of you tuning in online and for those of you here with us in person, this is going to be the hadith we're going to stack up to and measure ourselves with. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of people are tired of theory. I'll be the one to say I'm tired of theory, tired of things that are in the books. A lot of times we're looking for real life practical solutions, the reality of things. If you're tired of theory, what do we do about it? You see? And so inshallah khair, this whole conversation, we're going to be talking about a number of practical things. But before we do that, we want to first set the stage. At least for us, we want to make sure to identify the situation, the issues at hand. Right, Brother Samir? The issues at hand. And so with this hadith, one thing to note is, for us here, at least we're local here. I know maybe those of you who are watching in from online or tuning in online from all over the world. And if you're, let's say, live right here, right now, or watching the replay, always happy to type in the chat where you're tuning in from. Love to see. I've seen some people in the US, people in Australia, people from all around. But right here, we're in Mississauga, in the greater Toronto area. So, Brother Samir, first question, how well do you think, in your observation, just looking at the patterns and things, how well do you feel for us as a community, right here in the GTA, how well do we measure up to this hadith of one body? General trends and observations, and we'll unpack as we go.
Yeah, that's a sensitive question because we're going to have various opinions on this. I think as a ummah, we kind of all understand what position we're in and what our strength is. Our strength is in numbers, but then there's obviously other places that we need to work on. Just to complement the beautiful hadith that Brother Max just presented and put in front of us, I was reminded, as he was reading, I was reminded of a surah in Quran, and the Quran is very clear in this position. It says in Surah Al-Anbiya, "Inna hadihi ummatukum ummatan wahidatan." Right? That very clearly that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this ummah of yours is one single ummah. But then as we sit here and reflect on what's been happening, and we watch the news cycle, we have to challenge ourselves and pragmatically reflect on our situation and answer the question for ourselves. And it's not just at a systemic level. It's not the question, brother, that you asked. Like, I wouldn't just ask it from the lens of at a community level or at an organizational level, right? Because there's obviously work that's being done there, but also as an individual level, like within our families, right? Within our extended families, our first cousins, our second cousins, and so forth. Like, what is our general sense of community and organization? And I think that ultimately gets reflected, right, in various levels. So I think there's definitely work to be done there. But I see this community coming together in mashallah, a lot of different ways. Just in the Friday Jummah, we had a Janazatul Ghaib, and there was a lot of people that attended, right? So there is a clear sense of unity. We just have to, I think, move it to a strategic level, like as to how we approach the issues that we see in our community. But yeah, it's an individual. The answer to that question would be individual and different, but I think work needs to happen there.
I hear you, because sometimes when just show of hands. Again, this is a two-way street, and for those of you tuning in on live, love to hear your voice as well. How many of you find it hard to plan a family trip, deciding where to go? Anyone ever experienced? Yeah, some of you? Yeah, some, yeah? You've had those moments, so even if it's tough to not necessarily unite, even at that simple example, how about on the bigger front, the bigger issues? You see, right now a lot of the focus is on Palestine, and may Allah alleviate the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. As soon as that news struck, October 7th, do you see the Ummah going in different directions? Everyone has their own opinion to how to solve the problem, yes or no? And if you're pulled in like a million different directions, can you move forward? Can you move forward, right? So that's the ultimate thing. So from what I gathered, at least it starts at the family level. You may not have to agree, but can you move forward in spite of those disagreements? Is that fair to say? So before we pack up that part of the conversation, how well can we, I know you're right, to each their own individual level. From what you've seen, your life and experience here in the Ummah, what would you say, how well do we handle disagreements? Let's say Ramadan, for instance, it's around the corner, subhanAllah, right? Moon sighting, moon fighting. You heard of this before. But in spite of that, just one last, point to note, like how, in your estimation, do we handle those situations?
All these questions are, I think, designed to get me into trouble.
Well, I'm getting in there too, don't worry.
Not very well, I would say, right? So just to be transparent and candid here, we all, are frustrated at different things at different points in our lives. The economy doesn't help. There are pressures that are sort of layered in, and so whenever there is a disagreement, we don't always have the right coping mechanisms, right, to deal with those situations. But I think it all comes down to education, awareness, right? It comes down to what your personal connectivity is. Do you have a family support system? Do you have a network that you can rely on in times of those disagreements? And then what do you do personally to channel those disagreements or those feelings of disagreement or negativity? Do you take positive action? Do you try to change and make an impact, or do you just keep that inside, right, and let that fester? So I think releasing that stress goes a long way in detangling that disagreement.
100%. See, the whole idea behind this is to see problems as they are, but not worse than they are. So if we don't even acknowledge, the first step to solving a problem is to what? Acknowledging that there is a problem in the first place. So if our own, let's just, okay, if we bring it down to the family level, yes, we look at one ummah, it may be too large. We can't grasp that. It's intangible at times, right? Like you're thinking the ummah, mashallah, right here in Mississauga, it's just innumerous, you see? But imagine, just take it, bring it down to the family level just for a split second, like, handling those disagreements, conflict resolution, you're saying. We may not be equipped with the emotional maturity and the communication maturity to handle those kind of conversations. And so, fair enough. So if we look at this, Rasulullah is saying the ummah is one body. When one part is in pain, everybody rushes to fix it, yeah, and help it out, just like that. Now, for us as Muslims, yes, maybe there's always work to be done, right, for everyone. Now, if we were to move forward, now here's a thought that I've come across. I'd love to hear your take on this. And again, this is an open dialogue, open conversation. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. You see, sometimes I had a conversation with a brother, and he was telling me one interesting thing. When I say interesting in the sense that at least he revealed his perspective on things. And he said that, Brother Max, I don't know, I don't have the bandwidth or the emotional support to care for everybody. How am I supposed to cry for the people in this country and that country and this country and that country? There's too much. I can't handle it. It's too much for me. I don't know. And so the ultimate question is, for us, as we say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, for us as Muslims, if there is too much information overload, too much despair, too many problems, how do you make strangers feel like family? How can you look at someone, I've never met you before, I've never seen you in my life, and yet I know you're in pain. How can I look at you as if you're a family member I've known for years, years, and years?
Yeah, I spoke earlier about namaz-e-janaza, and that's a quite powerful example of how the community comes together. You may not know the person, you may not know the family, but we know that we're going to be in that spot eventually one day. And so if we pray for others, then we hope, inshallah, that others will pray for us. So we do that for strangers. I think when it comes to visiting the sick, that's very important to do, even though you may not know them. And then volunteering, going to meet the sick, the old, all of that imbibes in you this sense of community. So we can choose. It's a choice. We can choose to be selfish in how we live our lives, and keep the focus very limited to just what I need to get done for the day, or for the people that I love or love me. But then how do we connect to that greater sense of community? The path to Allah is wide, right? Like there's so many diverse ways of connecting with the community, not just volunteering, but Brother Max, you're doing some entrepreneurial work, right? So you have a mission. Everybody should need to find a purpose and a mission so that they can sort of connect that with their purpose. That's the brand that you create for yourself. And you live by that, and hopefully community is a big part of that brand.
Yeah, mashallah. I think that you're right, like instilling that. I like the example of janazah. SubhanAllah, I can tell you, anyone here have attended a janazah before? Funeral prayer? Anyone ever? SubhanAllah, I remember once I attended one recently. It was out of the blue. There was a mother. She was in Ramadan. I remember, I saw her with my own eyes. She was walking around with her son, and then a few months later, some time, and she passed. And I remember very vividly, I remember just standing, waiting for the salah. And it's been a while for me personally to attend a funeral prayer, the janazah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's tragic as it is, and I said to myself, I can hold it together. I thought, I can hold it. I can do it. I can handle it. But the moment that the box was rolled out right in front of me, I kid you not, uncontrollable waterfalls. And the reason I'm saying this, and the reason I'm sharing this with you, is that unless you experience that, you'll never truly understand what it feels like to be in pain. When I saw the son, the family, even a small little boy, part of the family, I had to hold him. He was shaking. Unless you really experienced pain, unless you really experienced that tragedy, you'll never really know what it feels like. So when everything is, remember I said in the beginning about theory? We can look at things from a book. We can look at things on the paper. Even, I don't want to disrespect the Quran, but for many of us as Muslims, maybe the Quran even is just surface level. And I'm including myself in this conversation. We look at it, pass by the ayah, we don't live it. The ayah are speaking to us. Allah is talking to us. If we don't feel something, then it's just words on a page. It's just theory. So when Rasulullah is saying, wait, when someone is in pain, when the people are crying out, when you see those social media posts and you don't feel something, I don't feel something, something's wrong with that picture. So subhanAllah, that's a wonderful example you gave about janazah. But how do you make strangers feel like family? Find that common ground. Find something you have in common. Maybe some of us here have lost that loved one. That's one thing right there, right? Maybe the masjid you go to, there's another thing. So any other points about this whole issue of
Yeah, absolutely. And, for the I see young kids here as well. For kids that are growing up here, how do we create a sense for them, right, that they're connected to a greater whole? I mean, it's hard to connect with people of Palestine when we're struggling to connect with our neighbors, right here at home. Obviously the priorities need to be reevaluated. Introspection is needed. But to create that sense, we need to round up our youth and their experiences. We need to round them up. And international travel, or just travel in general, I find is very helpful for children. I mean, parents should be encouraging their children, sending them on trips that exposes them to some of the difficulties that we're so insulated and we live our comfortable lives, and then we lose that relatability. So when we tell our kids, "Yay, don't waste that food. There's some kid out there who doesn't have enough, and here you are wasting your food." But that's just verbal. It's not gonna create an impact. It's just a thing you've said, and you hope that it hits them in the right way. But what's more powerful, right, is to share images, is to talk about the stories, is to discuss things and to humanize it and to bring it into their reality. We should be Masjid al-Aqsa is very close to all of our hearts, obviously, and we should all try to visit it, right? Imagine the influence, right, and the imprint in the minds of children that we create when we share information like that, when we take them and we show them. Now, many of the people that are of not our community, right? They would be non-Muslims or others. When even they don't understand, because we haven't done a good job explaining a lot of the situation there. But when they go and they visit, they're blown away, right? Like they can tell right away how big the difference is between reality on the ground and what they're hearing. And that's the impact I think that we need to create for ourselves, to create that relatability to what is this ummah, and it starts here at home.
SubhanAllah, man, nothing beats first-hand experience. Nothing beats first-hand. As you were talking about about the food, don't waste food or this. You really don't appreciate what you have until you see it firsthand, what other people are going through. I remember I visited a hospital, and there was a patient, and that patient was being fed through a tube. A tube, you see? So now, if you're saying, oh, I don't have food or this, that, if you don't see it or experience it, get that visceral reaction, then subhanAllah, what more can you say? So 100%, having those moments, having those experiences, if it's always home, school, car, home, school, car, home, school, car, then your world is just that, in a box. But the more you get out there, the more you stretch and stretch and stretch, subhanAllah, life takes on a whole new meaning. And speaking of meaning, and speaking of this, another point of conversation here is the difference between wisdom and emotion. Now, in the context of what we're talking about, the idea of one body, one ummah. Remember how in the very beginning, we're looking specifically at the example of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And everybody or a lot of people have their own unique approach of how they think the situation should be addressed. Now, granted, you look at the ways how people approach things, not calling anyone out. You look at it and you might say, you know what, that's probably not the best way to go about it. It's doing more harm than good. Now, with that, especially with us as one body, one ummah, Brother Samir, what's, let's say, a guiding principle with regards to wisdom versus emotion? The moment you have a knee-jerk reaction to something, emotions kick in. But is this really what the deen teaches us, and how so?
Yeah, I think we all know the answer to it, but it's very hard to stay. It's very hard to think properly, think clearly when you're emotional. And when you're not emotional, you can strategize, you can take a pause, you can think about, okay, what's the best strategy? How do I attack this? How do I approach this? And when you're acting like knee-jerk reactions, the brain doesn't have time to process all of that, right? So it's purely a knee-jerk reaction, and you're doing a disservice to yourself and the people around you, and even your own cause, by not giving thought to what you're about to say, what you're about to do. And think tanks, policy institutions, they're supposed to provide guidance, research, things that we can look to strategize around and how to proceed. But in the moment, in the heat of the moment, it's hard. So it comes with practice, right? Like there's no switch that I can press if I'm angry, and then I don't have a wisdom switch. I wish I did, I wish we all did. But we don't, yeah, exactly. Like, that would be nice. But we don't. So wisdom fluctuates. Like, we are in better states of wisdom sometimes, and when we're emotional, our wisdom intelligence goes down, right? So we have to, remember that, right? And then look at the Seerah of Rasulullah. Like, that's a perfect model, right? He's the exemplar.
Can you give me an example of that? I was glad that you brought it up from Rasulullah's life, where he had to juggle or maybe look at wisdom where he could have easily been emotional.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the powerful event in his life, Rasulullah, was, when he visited Taif and the hardship that he saw there. I mean, that's, being hurt, and just not physically, but emotionally, right? And then what would have been, a knee-jerk reaction for one of us, right? But then he had the wisdom to imagine, centuries ahead and generations ahead. And that obviously, I mean, that's not a wisdom that we can ever, come close to, but it's a template, right?
Yeah, so I remind as well, Yusuf alayhi salam. Can you imagine okay, again, I love, man, I don't know about you, but the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, it's so near and dear. I don't know what to say. Imagine all your life you're tossed around. You're thought of as worthless, less than a dime. They don't think of you as anything more than a few dollars, sold into slavery, pushed to another country. And now, mashallah, you're now through time and through patience, through everything, through wisdom. Yusuf alayhi salam, subhanAllah, if you notice one thing, and if I'm not mistaken, may Allah forgive me for any mistakes, Yusuf alayhi salam at one point, when he was in jail, he told the guards and he told the people, say my name to the people of, in Al-Aziz, like mention my name, Yusuf. And one of the benefits of that, subhanAllah, is that he was in jail for so long that the people who originally were with him and had that incident of Zulaykha, they weren't there. They thought that he was gone and it was all swept under the rug. So many years later, while he was in jail and he says, mention my name, Yusuf, The people who were around that era, who heard this scandal, who heard this thing happening, they're saying, Yusuf, I haven't heard that name in so long. He's still in there? He's still in jail? SubhanAllah, how he came up with this strategy. So you're right. And now imagine, he's now in a position of authority. From someone who was worthless to someone who is priceless. From someone who was worthless, sold for a few dollars, is now controlling all the wealth of Egypt. And now he's in a position, you're right, now with that knee-jerk reaction, if I just use my emotions and I see my brothers, the ones that PTSD, what you've done, that post-traumatic stress disorder, I see my brothers, the very same ones who threw me in that well, the very same ones who sold me into slavery, guess what I'll do to you? And yet he said, you're forgiven. So if we don't use this is what am I trying to say here? You know what I mean? If we don't live this, it's just words on a page. If we don't feel that, then the next time you and I get wrong, the next time you see our ummah gets in problem and pain, we don't just operate with our emotions. You see? Emotions are good to be the fuel, but it's not good to be the guide. It's not meant to be your GPS. It's meant to be a fuel. You get angry, that's your fuel. But don't use that to be the GPS to guide you to what to do next. You see? So
yeah, and to contextualize this in the social media world, knee-jerk reactions are always a bad idea. I think firstly, people get a false sense of anonymity. They think that they're anonymous when they're posting stuff online because you're not looking at someone physically, right? So they're more open with their thoughts and more expressive. But there is no anonymity, right? Like, people will know who you are when you post it, right? It's especially if a line gets crossed, it's very easy to figure out who you are. So knee-jerk reactions on social media are very bad. The second point there is that it doesn't go away. It's there forever, right? So you may be under pressure, and you may, we're not ourselves when we're angry or when we're emotional. I don't think we are defined by our worst moments, right? We should be defined by the average, right, of our best moments and our worst moments. I mean, that's who you are ultimately, the way people see you. So you're not really yourself when you're angry and you're posting something, or you're sad and you're posting something. And so just remember that what you're posting is going to be representation of who you are for the rest of your life, because that can be dug up by anyone at any time in the future. And is this how you want to be remembered? Like, your own family could look at it, others can look at it. So always have that, for Muslims, we talk about ihsan, right? And it's, for Muslims, this shouldn't be a concern, right? Because we should know that that Allah is watching us, right? Even if we don't see Him, we know that He sees us. And so that should be really our moral compass, not that, that the camera's on. But it is, our community is under a microscope right now. So we have to be careful with what we say and how we say it. But we also have to hold others accountable. So if somebody else crosses the line on social media, use those same mechanisms to report those incidences. Even at work, there might be, people who are in the workplace, they have their own policies, their own work ethics. And if your coworkers are violating that, there is a process that can be followed. Like, don't be intimidated and don't follow the process, because others do follow the process. And so we should also stand up for ourselves. And if we see others are crossing that line, then we should push back. I think we don't push back enough, and then we are frustrated.
Two things to know. We'll continue with this. So one, there's this golden rule I've come across that will help your social media world. If it's a golden rule to follow, that way you're going to make sure and ensure life is good. Whatever you post, whatever text message you send, whatever private message you send, assume the whole world will know it. If you assume the whole world will see whatever you're posting, then if you're okay with it, then there you go. That's your guiding compass. Don't think that, oh, I have a private message and this, oh, everything. All it takes is a little screenshot, and then guess what? The whole world, the private message isn't so private anymore. You see? So if you assume everything you post, anything you share, any email, anything, the whole world will know about it, that will make you and I think twice, 3 times before, is it really worth it to share XYZ? Because in the heat of the moment, it's very easy to post something, and then how many people backtrack, regret, and again, may Allah protect all of us, myself, and I'm including myself in this conversation, right? No one's immune from this. We make mistakes. However, it's best, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. It's better that you think twice, 3, 4 times before you post something than you post something, oops, excuse me, accident, I'm sorry, then you have to do the whole apology video, then people criticize the apology video, then you got to make an apology of that apology, and then the apology is also, so you see where I'm going with this? It's a never-ending cycle. So the golden rule is assume that everything you post and I post, whether it's personal messages or public, everyone will know it. Everyone will see it. So that's one thing. When it comes to that one ummah, one body, before you share something about so-and-so, they're going to find out. One way or another, Allah is just. If they're not going to find out here, they're going to find out on the Day of Judgment. So think twice, 3, 4, 5 times before you post something. So that's one thing. And the second thing, subhanAllah, what was the train of thought? What did you end off with? You had something. Oh, right, I know, alhamdulillah. Yeah, you have those moments, right? You know how it you were talking about jobs. I've seen, this is, again, I'm just reporting here, right? I've seen many posts on LinkedIn, people saying they're posting XYZ, and they lost their jobs. Now, of course, everyone is a unique situation, unique post, unique situation. Everything is unique. However, the point still stands. People lose their jobs based on what they're posting, and you see it in public. There you go. So, Brother Samir, what's some guiding principles or maybe some experiences that you've had, especially in the corporate world, where for Muslims that we make an impact, but of course you be mindful and not just go off the rails and just...
Yeah, so you gotta put yourself in a persona, right? When you come across a certain post that you think is inappropriate, are you just a consumer? Are you just the end user of that platform? And is that how you see yourself? And if that's the case, then you follow the guidelines provided by that platform provider, right? And then there's mechanisms to use to report and follow up on that. That's the bare minimum, I think, that anyone can do, right? Because we're all users at the end of the day. And then you may also be affiliated with an organization that prides itself for, their diversity and inclusion, or their stance on humanitarian rights, and they may have a very strong work ethic policy in place. And so I would say, the best way to deal with certain situations is, and by the way, if this applies more so if your coworker does it, but if they're doing it, let's say on LinkedIn, and now now it's an awkward situation, and how do you deal with this coworker who's posting these things on LinkedIn? So there is a work policy in place, ethics policy in place. I would definitely use that. And the best way to approach it, I've seen, Brother Max, is through either a humanitarian lens, because there is easily common ground to be found there, and then the other approach is the diversity, equity and inclusion lens, where hey, if everybody has to be included, right? Like we can't exclude everybody, and the rules and the standards apply to all, then they really should apply to all, and then we should challenge those assumptions by doing that. But yeah, I would just defer, the mechanisms that are already in place, because those are being underused right now.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Elaborate a bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, this is just a general observation, right? That you can either be an observer or you can be an active participant, and you can engage with the system. And there's different, every time, somebody pays a visit, like a politician will come to the mosque, or you have these things that are happening where We talked about unity, but obviously disagreements, right? They happen. What's the best approach? What's not? Whenever you have those differences, you always have those opposing views. So you have to be clear on what you stand for. You know what you have to be clear. Your conscious, your niyyah has to be clear, and then just go with that approach. I'm sorry, I kind of lost the question there.
Yeah, me too. That was I think the idea. Elaborating more on the lack of people using the process.
Yeah. So I think just engagement with technology, right? Adoption of technology, that has to be high. We have to be engaged with the system to change the system. If we don't use these mechanisms like reporting posts or taking action, there are oftentimes that are requests for emails, there's petitions, there's so many different things that are happening around it. Yes, we can feel inundated and overwhelmed by all of that, you know, even though they may take 10 seconds or 20 seconds, they can pile on, and right, they can add on to your psyche. But I think the more engaged we are, the more fulfilled we become. There is generally low engagement. Like a good example of this is that if you look at our diaspora, right? If you look at the diversity, our demographic diversity in GTA, and you map that to our representation in executive suites or in C-suite boardrooms, like what is that representation? Does that, and there's a gap there. Like we need to, I think, engage with the system and succeed in the system, right? So that we can have a stronger voice.
You know, that's amazing. You know, that's a great point, Subhan. I think people don't even care about the law until it affects them. Until something happens, that's it. I'll give you an example. There was this one brother walking in the park with his family. Nothing. Just ordinary day, walking in the park. Somebody went and attacked him to the point he had to go to the hospital. May Allah protect us and help us all. This happened here. As a result of that, he studied everything he could about Canadian law. Why am I using this as an example is you don't want to get hit before you open the books and start to understand how the law works. How many of us are aware of traffic laws and traffic law systems? You see? Until, yeah, you're saying kinda, maybe, yeah. But when the police officer shows up and, you know, knocks on your window and says you got a ticket, now all of a sudden, now what? How many people start to realize, what are my rights? You see? Only when it hits. Okay, you got some questions here? Yeah, it is a true story. You're asking about if the person got hit by, yeah. I don't mean to, I'm just saying this is a reality, right? That's the situation, but yeah. Laws about, yeah, asking is like laws about how to defend yourself. What is legal, what's illegal? You know what I mean? How many people are aware of that? And they don't realize it until, again, it hits. So many times people, they say, oh, I don't, you know, the whole conversation is one ummah, one body, right? If one part is in pain, everybody else rushes to, unless I feel the pain, I don't care. You know what, we're talking about donating blood, for example, another situation. Unless you have a family member who's gone through that, you will not see many sign-ups for it until you realize it's unfortunate. So again, the conversation is, how do we create that need without actually being in that situation? How can I feel that pain without actually being in pain? It's very tough. It's very difficult, you see? But you know, with social media active, like you mentioned, if I don't even understand my company's policies, I don't even understand what exactly, if someone is, you know, the workplace harassment, for example, what do? What are my rights? What are the situations? At least be somewhat, I'm not saying have a PhD in it, but at least some basic understanding. Don't wait for it to hit and then, let me figure out from there. You see? It's a good idea to get, just like how the Quran, we don't break it out, dust it off when it's Ramadan. You know how it is? The case, I'm including myself. We don't need to, this is our companion, this is our best friend. You and I should be familiar with it. Every day, like, oh, I know this surah. Oh, I know that. If I'm guilty of it. I'm saying this. I'm saying this. I'm saying this. I'm guilty. If the imam is reciting a surah, and you're wondering what surah is that? I've never heard of this before. Something is off. Something is off. That means something is. This is a litmus test. Wait a second. This is unfamiliar. When the beginning, the first few ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf, I'm like, oh, I know Surah Al-Kahf. Okay, I'm familiar with it. But if there's other ayahs I'm not familiar, I'm like, what is this? I don't know where this is from. Something is off. That means I'm not. This is a connection to this. So same idea. One body, one ummah. If I don't feel anything, then it's lost. So any other points about social media activism? I mean, one, before we dive into practical strategies, and then we're going to open the floor to Q&A, one thing to start off is that with social media activism, some things you may have seen in a productive, healthy way is like changing your profile picture, right? Where it's something like, you see, I don't know if you remember like the blackout as an example, where there was like you ever seen, you know what I'm talking about? There was unfortunately, I hate to say that there's so many incidents that you can't keep track, but there was this one point, I think, was it a few years ago, where people changed their profile pictures to black? You know what I mean? They call it the blackout. Am I okay? Or maybe if there's something that says, about Palestine, like there's that aspect to it, social media activism, like.
Or even putting a flag up on your profile pic or something, that
signifies. So it's not like, oh, I'm, attacking or doing anything out of the ordinary. It's just you're showing solidarity in that regard. Anything that you've noticed or something effective that you've seen in social media where it comes to activism that could be worthwhile?
Yeah, I think, you hear boycotting a lot, right? So there's obviously, like everything else, there's divided opinions there. But it goes back to your niyyah. At the end of the day, Allah will reward us for whatever we do, as long as our niyyah is clear and our conscience is clear and we know why we're doing it. We're a people of purpose. We're a people of, we are not random. Allah is not random. Allah does not like randomness. Rasulullah was not random with the way he walked or saw people or said something. Like, humans are not meant to be random, like people are just like zombies walking around. We're supposed to, every single thing we do has to have a purpose and a meaning. And the higher the purpose and the meaning is, then the higher that person gets elevated, right, in the spiritual realm. And we were talking about feeling the pain of others. Empathy is how you feel the pain of others. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very empathetic. And I think all the answers are in the seerah. We know this intuitively, but as a reminder, we have to constantly keep going back to the seerah. In time of Imam Shafi'i, hikmah, the word hikmah was synonymously used with sunnah, or sunnah was synonymously used with hikmah. So hikmah was always understood as the sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like whatever he does is a hikmah, is a wisdom. And I think if that's something we like hold on to, then we can definitely make some good decisions.
Yeah, one last point about social media. I hate to say it, but the online world has no shortage of people who want to stir something up, especially in the comment section, right? People are there deliberately trying to get under your skin, and it's a never-ending back and forth. I can tell you, I'm active on social media, on my own videos. You see videos, people just inciting, just trying to add fuel to the fire. So as Muslims, what we got to do is we got to be water. When you see fire, you got to be water. Cool it off. Either don't respond, or if you do respond constructively. Thank you for the comment, and then you just tackle the issue at hand, never getting personal. So all it goes down to, because even within the Muslim community, you see people just going at it or what have you, or whatever it is. You see, whenever you see online, if you see fire, be water. So that's that. So now the last part of this conversation, then we'll open the floor to Q&A, is we talked about practicalities, right? We're not just talking theory, we're not just talking, in the air and then Assalamu alaikum, here we are, and that was nice. No, like we want to walk away with some ideas, some tools in your toolbox, so that way you can walk away with something that will get you closer to that one ummah, one body that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has talked about so eloquently. So practical strategies, how to get closer. I'll share a few, jump in. So one practical idea of how to get closer as an ummah, little by little, is to say salam to those you know and those you don't know. The next time you're in the masjid, I see mashallah some sisters on this side. I see a few, you guys are brothers, so I know you know each other, right? You're brothers by brothers. But there are some other brothers here you may not be aware of. You see? Have you met Brother Samir? Have you met Brother Samir? Kind of. Okay, so take this moment. Here, let's practice this. Say salam alaikum to him.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
MashaAllah, to those you know and those you, there you go. There's a connection right there. You see, and look at that, the exchange of smiles. You see it little by little. That's all you got to do. I didn't say you got to go invite everybody to your house and have a feast. All I'm saying is that the next time you introduce yourself to people, salam alaikum, to those you know and those you don't know. That's it. It's one small little teeny tiny thing that will make a big difference. Second idea, visit a new masjid. Maybe oftentimes you're maybe familiar with your own place and your own space, and like you mentioned, when you're in your own world, it's like you're limited and boxed in with your own thoughts. Maybe look around at other different masajid. No masjid is perfect, but you can start to get a good sense of what people are doing. You're going to meet wonderful brothers and sisters all around. So take this opportunity. You want to have one ummah, one body, then why not go and explore different masajid, see what's up, see what's around, and you get to learn and grow. There may be some new ideas, new thoughts. I mean, just me recently, I've attended new masajid in the GTA region. I've never been there, and inshallah tomorrow I'm planning also to go visit a new masjid. I haven't been there before. SubhanAllah, brand new community I've never met, and they are totally vibrant. It reinvigorates you in ways you didn't expect. And so when you build that connection little by little, then you can really build that bond. So visit new masjids nearby. Those that you can do your homework and look it up, and you got that. The third, I'm gonna borrow, mashallah, your example of attending a janazah. That's another way to really connect, because I know it's depressing, I know it's rough, I know it's hard, and I know it's difficult it's not fun to talk about, but at the end of the day, it's our final destination. We're gonna be buried 6 feet under. We have a limited time on this planet. The clock is running out every time. The moment you were born, the moment your mom held you in her hands, the shot clock is running down. We just don't know when. And so when you see someone who's lived a life, I heard it been put like this, subhanAllah, that if you really want to know if you lived a life worth living, when you were a baby, you were crying and everyone around you was smiling. When you lived a life that is worthwhile, you'll be on your deathbed smiling and everyone around you will be crying. That's truly how you'll know. When Rasulullah was done, when his time was up, the whole ummah collapsed, basically. You can imagine. How can a man like him be gone? The one you go to any question, anything you had, and this is the other thing, subhanAllah, I gotta make mention of this, and then you can jump in with more stress. How can one man make everyone feel that he was their best friend? How? Like, logically it's not possible. If I'm taking myself as an example, I can only be close to so many people. That means go visit them, get to know them a little more, just maybe even share a meal with them. There's limits to when you say someone is a close friend. There's a limit. How can you do that for, let's say, 200, 300, 400? How can 400 people, for example, I'm throwing a number out there, how can 400 people, all of them say, Rasulullah is my best friend? How? Example. How can one man make everyone feel like he's his best friend? How? Because it's not the time you spend with someone. It's the quality in that time you spend with someone. I could look at you for 30 seconds and make you feel like I'm your best friend. And I can spend 10 years with someone and still be distant. So subhanAllah, Rasulullah, he was someone that made everyone feel special. truly, truly feel special. And the more strategies that we implement in our daily life, inshallah khair, we will begin to feel that pain when others feel pain. You will begin to ask, how's the family? How's it going? I can't tell you, Brother Samir, how many brothers I've seen recently. I don't know why, subhanAllah, may Allah alleviate the suffering. There are people saying, lost their aunt, lost their uncle, I have health problems, the family is breaking apart, all at once. And subhanAllah, man, like you never know what goes on behind closed doors. You really don't. I don't. None of us do. Only Allah. But the more that we feel, you use the word empathy. If I can put myself in your shoes and you can put yourself in my shoes, how much closer do you think we could be? It's not a utopia. Inshallah, all of us will be reunited in Jannatul Firdaus and will live happily ever after. That's the goal. That's when we ultimately achieve that one ummah. Yes, maybe we won't see it here. Imam Slimi mentioned something, I'm going to hold on to it. What did he say? I'm optimistic with reservation. He likes to say that. Optimistic with reservation. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket and say that, we're all going to just be, everyone is going to be fine and life is good. The reality is, not everything is going to be fine. But even still, no matter what we do, inshallah khair, we will get past those things and make it fine. So, brother, I just went off on that, but
I was still processing that.
Yeah.
So, so we're talking. The topic is unity and being one ummah. I think the tragedy is that it's hard to see ourselves like that all the time, but I think tragedy in itself is a great unifying force, right? When someone in the family suffers something, the rest of the family comes together to help them cope with that situation. I mean, what's happening around the world, like I see a lot of, like people are forgetting their differences, their disagreements, and they're coming together, uniting for a common cause. So tragedy, this is one of the, hikmah or the wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that anything and everything that happens has many multiple causes, right, and opportunities and even benefits. So I think we should use this as an opportunity to not just unify, but also think about why we need to do that. What are some of the improvement opportunities here? And then we come out of this tragedy, better connected than before. So we should be better connected now before we were before October 7th. So I think that inshallah is something that I'm seeing in the community take shape, and hopefully we can we're passing that message on to the next generation and the next, and so that's sort of the learning sort of carry over, right? And we don't go back to our state of slumber, let's say.
Yeah, subhanAllah, we are turning tragedy into triumph. Even if you go just a little bit in history, the pandemic, how many things kind of, for better or worse, it exposed a lot of cracks. And at the same time, people sometimes got closer than ever, and some people got more distant than ever. And sometimes it just, I remember one person, just as a split second to talk about one person described the pandemic as accelerating life so that we're living in 2030 now. Basically what life would have been, so the year 2030, we're living it now thanks to the pandemic. With Zoom and hybrid and all this, it was already on that trajectory, but it just accelerated that. So sometimes you take a tragedy and you turn it into triumph because everyone has a common goal to achieve and something to unite. So there you go. It's unfortunate that you have to have a tragedy in order for people to get together, but for every dark cloud, there's a silver lining, and we can't just focus on the dark cloud all the time. It's good to have moments to concentrate on the silver lining, inshallah khair. So if you do your best, and leave the rest to Allah, as always, ask not what your ummah can do for you, ask what you can do for your ummah. The moment you start thinking like a government, the moment you start thinking as a body, like an organization, you're never going to do anything. I'm never going to do anything. Oh, you sit back and you say the Ummah should be doing 1, 2, 3, this is what the Ummah should be. Okay, but like you're just one. But if I can say, hey, let me try making somebody's day better by smiling, I can do that. Hey, let me try to help out somebody by giving them a call. I can do that. Hey, maybe I can go to a new masjid and just meet new people and say salam, and yeah, I can do that. Ask what you can do for your ummah. Just ask what I can do. You'll be surprised. If everybody does it, you're gonna be like that pebble. Throw that pebble in the pond, and the ripple effects will grow beyond what you imagined. So if we think of ourselves as that little pebble that can make a massive effect, instead of a big boulder that it takes to push and shove, inshallah khair, we're going to accomplish a lot more. We're more than the sum of our parts, bi'idhnillah. And so that concludes the conversation, but love to open the floor. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's a two-way street, the one body, one ummah conversation. Any questions or thoughts, love to hear from you. And the microphone, the floor is yours. Come on now.
We should say one at a time because we've got a full
One
house.
at a time, yeah, it's all.
Yeah.
Come on now, you can do this. I believe in you. Yes, Hazan, I know. It takes, yeah, go for it. I'm not an adult, but what can I do? How old are you? 11. MashaAllah. 10,
That was
10, 11, or 12. How many? What? Okay.
That was an adult question, by the way. He's
Yeah,
quite
there you
mature.
go. Okay, so talk to him, Brother Samir. What can an 11 turning 12-year-old boy do to help the ummah? I know it seems like a loaded question, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something he can do.
Yeah, and for your age, right, the answer would be what you should always be doing. But maybe now do it with more passion, right? Because there is going to be a time where you're going to be able to make more impact and leave a bigger imprint on the world. But for now, you have responsibilities, right? So I would focus on those responsibilities and I would excel in those responsibilities, whether it's school, whether it's listening to your parents, whether it's sharing news with your friends, whatever it may be. Like, focus on positivity. Pick certain things that are beneficial, and do not waste your time. One of the tragedies I think of our generation, right, is, and I went through this too, is that we waste a lot of time. So if you could do one thing, is train your mind to value time and to keep yourself busy with positive things, right? Too much of anything is bad, but even too much is now not seen as being too much. But there is too much TV that we watch. There's too many games that we play. There are too many idle conversations, like things that we talk about that have no, that don't better ourselves. I would focus on sports, right, to build yourself physically and mentally, so you can be strong. Those are the things. So I would basically take this time, because you don't have to worry about getting food. You don't have to worry about paying bills. You don't have to worry about taking care of having a roof over your head. All of the things are being provided for you. So I would see this as an opportunity to build yourself up, to try to excel in everything, but listen to your parents and prepare yourself for that adult that you will become. And then when you have that discipline, then you'll be able to achieve phenomenal things once you're out there in the world.
Yes, Hazem. Here's. You want to know how you're going to help the ummah? All you got to do is fill in this blank. I'm going to be the world's greatest, and fill in that blank. I'm going to be the world's greatest person. Be more specific than that. You see? So, for example, what am I saying? So, like, you just alluding to what Brother Samir was saying, in terms of a lot of people, they take time for granted. They say, oh, I'll just play games and do this and socialize, and I'll think about inshallah. This is not, you know what I mean? Like, if you figure out your path now, you're going to be miles ahead. I'll borrow the example of Kobe Bryant. Why did Kobe Bryant succeed the way he used to? He was ready at the age of 18. He bypassed college because he was working in the summer, nonstop. Now, while people are partying, he's working. While people are going out, he's in the gym. And he didn't let his age stop him. So when he was sitting on the bench, one of his teammates was injured. And they were looking around, oh, who should fill him in? All right, you go. And he was ready for the spotlight from day one because he knew what he wanted early on. So he didn't let his age stop him. So when you say, I'm going to be the world's greatest surgeon, I'm going to be the world's greatest dentist, I'm going to be the world's greatest graphic designer, I'm going to be the world's greatest computer programmer, I'm going to be the world's greatest barber, I'm going to be the world's greatest basketball player, I'm going to be the world's greatest, and you fill in that blank, the sooner you fill in that blank, Hazem, believe me, the better off you're going to be for the ummah. Because you know who you are, and you're going to help out a lot more people. Most people don't know who they are. They don't. They don't, and it's sad. Because the more you know who you are, you can help other people. But most people are lost. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us all. Because from time to time, if you can't help yourself, how are you going to help me? If I can't help myself, how am I going to help you? Help yourself to help others. And the way you do that, know who you are. And how do you know who you are? I'm going to be the world's greatest. And then build yourself towards that. Can you do that, Hazem? Yeah? Yeah? Say yes. With confidence, like with conviction, certainty. Yes, that's what I like to hear. MashaAllah. Anyone else? Any other questions for this? Man, what a nice note. You know, especially from, you know, the ummah's in good hands, inshallah khair. When you have Hazem, Muhammad, Kareem, and everyone, like Salma, am I missing anybody, am I? No. No, again. The family, mashallah, you're raising the next generation. When I look at you, I'm like, I can relax a little bit. I say the ummah is in good hands, inshallah khair. Anyone else? Any other questions, thoughts? All right. Khair, inshallah. If you're looking at this recording, by all means, feel free to say salam. You can just type in salam. Say salam to those you know and those you don't know. I'll leave a comment there so you'll see it. Inshallah khair. But again, thank you so much for those of you tuning in online. And for those of you here in person, it means a lot. Take this moment as well. Say salam to those you know and those you don't know. So inshallah khair, we're going to be one ummah, one body. Bi'idhnillah. Closing dua or closing words?
Yeah. So I think just to maybe tack on to what you said, Brother Max. So when you strive to be the best version of yourself, whatever that great person you want to become, just know that there is in the real world there's a cost, right? It comes with hard work, it comes with sacrifice, right? And just keep that in mind, understand the sacrifice, and know those values that you will not compromise on that journey, right? So that's important. So the destination isn't the only important thing, but it's also how you get there, right? So those two things have to go together. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا افتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وأنت خير الفاتحين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين.
السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم.